Hello children, welcome back to online class. I am AKKAMAHADEVI, your science teacher from Upper Public School, Kalaburagi. So children, today I am here with the continuation of the same chapter, that is separation of substances. So before we start this class, let us recall the points which we have discussed in the previous class. So in the previous class we have discussed about few methods of separation. Okay, so let me write here once again. Methods of separation. Okay, so which are those? Children, can you recall? So the first method hand picking. Second one is threshing. Winnowing. Yes. Next is sieving. Sedimentation. Decantation. Next is, yes, filtration. Evaporation. And, yes, can you recall? Exactly. Condensation. Okay, so these are few methods of separation. Which are those? Hand picking, threshing, winnowing, sieving, sedimentation, decantation, filtration, evaporation, condensation. So in the previous class we have discussed about hand picking, threshing, winnowing and sieving. Okay. So what do you mean by hand picking here? Removing the impurities with the help of our hands which are present in grains and pulses. Okay. So that is hand picking. And what do you mean by threshing here? Yes, the process of separating grains from the stalks. Okay, so what do you mean by threshing? The process of separating grains from stalks. So next, winnowing. So here what we are separating? We are separating heavier and lighter components of a mixture, isn't it? So here what we are doing? We are separating lighter components from heavier components. Okay, and here in sieving what we have discussed? Yes, it is a technique for separating particles of different sizes. Okay. So now today let us discuss about sedimentation. Okay. So what do you mean by sedimentation? When the heavier component in a mixture settles down after water is added. Okay, so here when the heavier component in a mixture settles down after water is added to it. Okay, so when water is added to it, the heavier components will settles at the bottom. So this process is called sedimentation. Okay, so what do you mean by sedimentation, children? When the heavier component in a mixture settles down after water is added to it, the process is called sedimentation. So once again, I'll repeat, children. When the heavier component in a mixture settles down after water is added to it, and what we call for this process? We call sedimentation. So let me show you. Okay, so here I took one glass and here rice. Okay, so just I am adding rice to empty glass. Okay, so why I'm showing you this means, because see, whenever we cook food, as we have discussed in the previous class, that before cooking we clean or we wash the grains or pulses, isn't it? So here I took a glass of rice and now I'm going to add water to this rice. Okay, so what is going to happen now? Okay, so when I add, okay, so when I add rice and water, see, after few methods of separation, even though there are dust particles or even though there are very small soil particles which may be present in the rice. Okay, so now when we take those rice to clean, so we get dirt water, isn't it? So when we add water to rice, what happens, children? Obviously the rice settles at the bottom. Why the rice will settle at the bottom? Because here rice is a heavier component. Okay, so here rice is heavier component. So here, so that what happens? The rice will settle at the bottom. Okay, as you all can see. So the rice is the heavier component, so that it settles at the bottom. So this process is called as sedimentation. So when the heavier components settles at the bottom after water is added to it. Okay, so once again I'll show you, just a minute. Okay, so all you can see here rice which has settled at the bottom, because here rice is a heavier component and the mixture like the dust particles or the soil particles, very small soil particles which are present in the rice, is floating along with the water because they are very lighter, isn't it? So from this what we come to know? We come to know that the heavier components will settle at the bottom after adding water. So that process is called as sedimentation. So here you can see when the heavier component in the mixture. So here is a mixture of rice and water. So what has settled down here? Rice has settled down. Why? Because it is a heavier component. Okay. And what about the dust particles which are present in the rice? Yes, it is floating along with water because they are very lighter, isn't it? So here the definition or the process of sedimentation is when the heavier component in a mixture settles down after water is added to it, the process is called sedimentation. Okay, so this is the best example. When we add water to raw rice, the raw rice will settle at the bottom because here the raw rice they are heavier components, so that they have settled at the bottom, and the dust particles or the soil particles which are present in that rice will float along with the water. Okay, so this is sedimentation. So now next method is decantation. Okay, so what do you mean by decantation? Yes, children? So we have discussed about sedimentation. Okay. So now next is decantation. The process in which water or any other liquid. Okay, so here the process in which water or any other liquid above the sediment is removed or poured without disturbing the sediment. So here without disturbing the sediment, if we pour the water, so that process is called as, yes, decantation. So for this, I'll show you. So as I have shown you, like the rice which has settled at the bottom, isn't it? So now the water, okay. So slowly what we should do? We should pour this water to another glass, okay. So slowly okay. So here I have separated water from this glass to this glass. Okay. So this process separating or removing the water without disturbing the sediment is called decantation. So here it's there. The process in which water or liquid above the sediment. So sediment means which has settled at the bottom, isn't it? So above the sediment. Okay. Above the sediment is removed or poured out without disturbing the sediment is called decantation. So here in this process, like we have separated the water, okay, we have separated the water without disturbing the sediment which has settled, rice has settled at the bottom, that is sedimentation, isn't it? So without disturbing the sediment, I have removed the water from that sediment. So this process is called as decantation. Okay, so the process in which water or any other liquid above the sediment is removed or poured out without disturbing the sediment is called, yes, decantation. Okay, so this is about decantation. So now we have completed which method of separation? Decantation. Okay, so now next method is filtration. Filtration is a method for separating insoluble solid. So here filtration is a method for separating an insoluble solid. Separating an insoluble solid Yes, from solid to, we are separating insoluble solid from a liquid. So here what we are doing? We are separating insoluble solid from a liquid, isn't it? So this process is known as filtration. So here in this process what we are doing? We are separating insoluble solid from a liquid. The process is called filtration. Okay, so for this, the best example is separating tea leaves from liquid, which we have explained in which method? Yes, children? In the separation method, isn't it? So where we have separated solid from liquid. So here, for this, the best example is separating tea leaves from liquid. So here tea leaves, solid, that is insoluble solid from liquid. Liquid is tea, isn't it? So here separating the insoluble solid from liquid. So this process is known as filtration. Okay, so filtration is used to separate pulp and seeds from the juice. Okay, so after, like, when we prepare juice, we will extract the pulp from juice, isn't it? So there also separation takes place, isn't it? And just now, as I said, like, to separate tea leaves from liquid, filtration takes place. Okay, and even to separate cheese or paneer from milk, there also filtration takes place, isn't it? So this is about filtration. So here it is a process where we are separating insoluble solid from liquid. Okay, so now next method is evaporation. So what do you mean by evaporation? Okay, so here evaporation is a process in which a liquid gets converted into its vapor. Okay, evaporation. It is a process. So evaporation is the process in which liquid gets converted into its vapor. Okay, so here evaporation is a process in which liquid gets converted into its vapor. So now you all might be thinking that how? Okay, so for this, let us take one beaker. Okay, children. So add some water. Okay. So now take burner. Okay. Start to heat this water. Okay. So now what happens? Obviously after a few minutes, water starts to boil. Okay. So if we go on heating this beaker, what happens? So the water which is present in the beaker starts So the water which is present in the beaker starts evaporating. Okay. So here, see the water which is present in the beaker. So when we go on continuously heating this beaker, the water which is present in the beaker starts evaporation. So from this, we come to know that liquid, which is water, gets converted into vapor. So These are the vapors. So here liquid is converting it into vapor. So that process is called as evaporation. So here what do you mean by evaporation, children? It is a process in which liquid gets converted into its vapor. Okay. So where this evaporation takes place? Yes, children. Evaporation can be used to separate a solid dissolved in a liquid. This is how later on I will show you how we can separate a solid which is dissolved in liquid. Okay, and even by the process of evaporation, salt can be obtained from salt water or sea water. Okay, so by the process of evaporation only salt is obtained from sea water. Okay, so this is about evaporation. Okay, so now next method we will discuss. Okay, so there are some instances where one method of separation is not possible to separate the substances. So in that situation, what we should do? We should use more than one method of separation. Okay, so which is that? Let me tell you. So here, first let me add water, sand, salt. Okay, so now I want to separate a mixture of water, sand and salt. Okay, so to separate this water, sand and salt, we need more than one method of separation. Okay, how? Let me tell you. Okay, so let us start this activity. So first let me take one beaker again. Okay, I'll add this water. Okay, I'll add this water to this beaker. So now I will add sand also. Okay, here, and even I'll add salt also. Just I'll stir it. Okay, so after few minutes, what happens, children? Yes, the salt dissolves in water, isn't it? So the salt dissolves in water. And what about sand? So here sand is a heavier component. So sand will settle at the bottom. Okay, so here I'll show you. Sand, which is heavier component, will settle at the bottom, and here we get a mixture of water plus salt. Okay, so here what salt is completely dissolved in water. Here you can see, and the sand which has settled at the bottom. So now how can we separate this sand from salt water? Which process can be used here? Yes, children, which method? The heavier component has settled at the bottom. So now I want to separate this from water. Yes? Exactly, by the process of sedimentation and decantation. So slowly, if I pour this water to another beaker, so this I'll show you here. Okay, so if I pour this water to this beaker, so here salt plus water, and we have separated here sand. Okay, so by the process of sedimentation and decantation, we have separated sand. Okay, so now there is a mixture of again salt and water. So now again we should separate this salt and water. So now which process takes place? Yes, children. So first process is by the process of sedimentation and decantation, we have separated the salt, water and sand. So sand which has settled at the bottom is in one beaker. So that is separated. Sand has separated. So now here again a mixture of salt and water is present. So now we should separate salt and water. So now which method can be applicable there? Yes? Let me explain. Sand is available here. Salt plus water. So sand we have separated by the process of sedimentation and decantation. So now we should separate this salt and water. Okay. So now for this, what we should do? So just you open page number 41. Okay. Figure 5.13. Okay. So here the water which is remain in this beaker, we should pour that water in a kettle as you all can see in the figure. Okay. So transfer that liquid which is a mixture of salt and sugar, like salt and water. Okay. Transfer that liquid to a kettle. Okay. And close its lid as you all can see in the figure. Okay. So now start to heat that kettle. Okay. So just see here in the figure. So just start to heat that kettle and just you should hold a metal plate with some ice cubes on that metal plate as you all can see here. Okay. So where the vapors are coming out from that kettle, there you should hold one metal plate which is like above the metal plate, ice cubes should be placed. Okay. So now what happens? Slowly the vapors which are reaching to that metal plate. So there it cools down the vapors and again it transfers to the beaker as water. Okay. So this process we should go on doing continuously until the water gets completely evaporated. Okay. So like this here, water is going to separate from the kettle to beaker and what is remained in the kettle? Yes. What is remained? Exactly. Salt is remained in the kettle. So this process, the process where water vapors are converting it into liquid. Okay. So here vapors are converting into liquid. That process is called as condensation. Okay. So evaporation is like what happened there? Yes, children. So in the evaporation, liquid is converting it into vapor, but in condensation, vapors are converting into liquid. Okay. Once again, I'll repeat. In the evaporation, liquid, that is water. Okay. Liquid is converting into its vapor, whereas in condensation, vapors are converting into liquid. So like this, we can separate water, sand and salt separately by using more than one method of separation. So here sedimentation we used, decantation we used, evaporation we used, and at last we come to know about condensation. So here condensation, the vapors which comes out from the kettles are converted into liquid. Okay. So condensation means converting vapors into liquid. Okay. So this is about condensation. Okay. So we have discussed about condensation. condensation. Okay, so these are all the methods of separation. So now at last, solubility of substances. Okay, solubility of substances. So for this, you take one beaker and add, like take one glass of water. Okay, add 1 teaspoon of salt. Stir it. Okay, just go on adding 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. You go on adding salt and stir continuously. What happens, children? By adding 1 spoon of salt, it dissolves in water. 2 spoon dissolves. 3 dissolves. But if you go on continuously adding salt to water, at some instant time it stops dissolving and it forms a solution. So that solution is called as saturated solution. Okay, so after some time water stops dissolving. Okay, it stops dissolving. So after adding 1, okay, 2, okay, but if we go on adding more salt in water, it stops dissolving and it forms a solution which is known as saturated solution. Okay, so from this what we come to know? We come to know that water dissolves different amount of soluble substances in it. Okay, so this is all about separation of substances. Okay, children, I hope like you all have understood the different methods of separation which we have discussed in this lesson. Okay, children, this is for all today's class. Thank you. Have a nice day.